I never thought I'd be the type of guy to suspect his wife of cheating. My name's Michael, and I've been married to Jennifer for nearly 12 years. We've got 2 kids, a boy and a girl, ages 8 and 6. To everyone on the outside, we were the ideal family, the perfect suburban dream with a house, a picket fence, and smiles all around. But inside our home, cracks started forming that I just couldn't ignore. It all began subtly, like a shift in the air that you can't quite put your finger on. Jennifer, or Jen as I used to call her, was always a strong-willed woman. But over the last couple of years, her temper had gotten shorter, her words sharper. She'd go from being sweet and affectionate to downright venomous in the blink of an eye. And it was always over the smallest things, like me leaving a glass on the counter or forgetting to pick up the dry cleaning. But that wasn't the worst part. The real change was in her behavior. She started spending more time out of the house, claiming she had to run errands or meet up with friends. I'd ask her who she was meeting, and she'd snap back with, "Why do you care?" Or, "You're not my keeper, Michael." It was as if every innocent question I asked was some kind of insult or invasion of privacy. Then there was her phone. It became her lifeline, glued to her hand day and night. She'd never let it out of her sight. The second I walked into a room, she'd lock the screen or flip it over, as if I didn't already know she was hiding something. I tried to brush it off at first, told myself that I was just being paranoid. After all, we were married. We had kids. Why would she be hiding things from me? But the more I pushed those doubts aside, the stronger they grew. It was like a splinter festering under the skin, impossible to ignore. One night, she left the house claiming she was going to a girls' night with some old college friends I'd never met. Normally, I wouldn't have thought twice about it, but something in her voice, something in the way she couldn't quite meet my eyes, set off alarm bells in my head. I couldn't sleep. I paced the living room, glancing at the clock every few minutes, waiting for her to come home. Midnight passed, then 1, then 2 in the morning. When she finally stumbled in, smelling faintly of wine and something else I couldn't place, she just looked at me like I was a piece of gum stuck to her shoe. "Why are you still up?" she slurred slightly, her eyes narrowing. "Just wanted to make sure you got home safe," I said, keeping my voice calm. She snorted, a cruel smile twisting her lips. "You're such a sap, Michael. Stop acting like you care so much." With that, she brushed past me and went upstairs to bed, leaving me standing there, staring at the space she'd just vacated. It wasn't just her words that cut deep, it was the tone, the absolute disdain. Like I was some pathetic loser she was stuck with. The next morning, as I was getting the kids ready for school, I found her phone lying on the kitchen counter. For the first time, she'd left it unattended, unlocked. My heart started pounding as I stared at it, an internal war raging inside me. I knew I shouldn't invade her privacy. I knew it was wrong. But something inside me, some desperate, clawing need for answers, won out. I picked up the phone and opened it. There were no messages, no suspicious apps, nothing out of the ordinary. But when I checked her recently deleted messages, my blood ran cold. There were dozens of texts between her and a number saved as Mark G. Texts that made my stomach twist in knots. "I can't wait to see you tonight, baby. I'll be wearing that dress you like." And nothing else underneath. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. My hands started shaking as I scrolled through more of the messages. Flirty, intimate, downright suggestive texts that left no room for doubt. My wife was having an affair. I wanted to confront her right then and there, but I knew I needed more proof. She was smart, cunning even. If I jumped the gun, she'd just twist everything around, make me out to be the bad guy. I needed something concrete, something she couldn't weasel her way out of. So I started paying closer attention. I tracked her movements, made note of her lies and inconsistencies. I felt like a detective piecing together a crime scene, but it was all happening in my own home, with the woman I thought I knew better than anyone else. And then one day, as I was going through some old family photos, I stumbled across something that made my blood freeze. It was a picture of us at the beach, taken about 7 years ago. We looked happy, carefree, me, Jen, and our newborn son, Charlie. But something caught my eye. something I'd never noticed before. Charlie's eyes. They were a deep brown, almost black, just like Jen's. But I have blue eyes, as did my parents and my grandparents before them. And that's when a terrifying thought crept into my mind. What if Charlie wasn't mine? It felt like a betrayal within a betrayal. I knew I had to find out. So I went out and bought a DNA testing kit, making up some excuse to swab both Charlie and our daughter, Emma, telling them it was for a fun science project for their school. Jen didn't question it, too busy texting away on her phone to pay me much attention. I sent off the samples, my heart in my throat the entire time. I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to be right. But some part of me, some dark, twisted part, knew that the truth would shatter everything I'd ever believed about my family, about my life. 2 weeks later, the results arrived. I remember sitting in my car, tearing open the envelope with trembling fingers. I read the words on the page, my vision blurring as everything I knew crumbled around me. Probability of paternity, 0%. Charlie and Emma weren't mine. My own children weren't mine. My entire marriage, my entire life, was built on a foundation of lies. And the worst part? As I sat there, staring blankly at the DNA results, I couldn't help but think back to all the times my own family, my parents, my sister, had exchanged those knowing glances, those quiet whispers when they thought I wasn't looking. They knew. They'd known all along. It wasn't just Jen who betrayed me. It was everyone I'd ever trusted, everyone I thought was on my side. And in that moment, I felt something snap inside me. This wasn't going to end with a confrontation. This wasn't going to be a simple divorce. No, I was going to take back control. I was going to make sure Jen felt every ounce of pain and humiliation she put me through. It was time to plan my revenge. I spent the next few days in a haze, drifting through my routine like a ghost. Each time I looked at my kids, no, her kids, the pain twisted like a knife in my chest. Every smile, every innocent laugh, every time Charlie or Emma ran up to me, calling me Dad, it felt like a cruel joke. I'd always thought I was their father, that I was raising my own flesh and blood. But they weren't mine. They were his, whoever this Mark G. was. And she'd been lying to me for years, making a fool out of me right under my own roof. But I wasn't going to let her get away with it. The next day, while she was out doing God knows what, I dug deeper into her phone records, emails, social media, everything. I uncovered more details, more lies. It turned out that Mark G. was no random fling. He was someone who'd been a part of our lives, someone I'd actually met at one of her work parties a few years back. He was her colleague, a tall, charming guy with dark hair and a smile that looked like it was permanently etched onto his face. I remembered shaking his hand, listening to his friendly small talk. Little did I know, that same hand was touching my wife behind my back. The memory made my blood boil, but I forced myself to stay calm. If I lost control now, she'd win. I needed to be smart, methodical. I hired a private investigator to trail Jen. I needed proof, concrete evidence that she was cheating, something irrefutable that I could use to expose her and take everything away. It didn't take long. Within days, the PI sent me a series of photos that confirmed my worst fears. Pictures of her and Mark, meeting up at a fancy hotel on the other side of town, laughing and holding hands like they didn't have a care in the world. They looked happy. She looked happy. It was disgusting. But the real kicker came when I received the investigator's report. They weren't just having an affair. They had a history that went back more than a decade. 10 years of lies, of deceit. I found out that they'd started seeing each other long before Charlie was born. It made sense now, why Charlie didn't look like me, why people would comment on his unique features that neither Jen nor I shared. It was because he wasn't mine. He was theirs. The betrayal ran so deep that it made my head spin. Jen had essentially built an entire second life with this man, a life I was oblivious to. And somehow, my own family had known about it, had kept her dirty little secret while I was playing the part of the doting husband and father. I couldn't wrap my head around it. How could they let this go on for so long? How could they look me in the eye and pretend everything was normal? I knew I needed to confront Jen, but I didn't want it to be in the heat of the moment. I wanted it to be calculated, cold. I wanted to make her squirm, to watch her crumble under the weight of her own lies. So I waited until the weekend when the kids were staying with my parents, who I now couldn't bear to look at, and Jen was lounging at home, acting like everything was fine. She was sitting in the living room, scrolling through her phone, when I walked in with the DNA results in one hand and the investigator's report in the other. I didn't say anything at first, just stood there, watching her. When she finally noticed me, she raised an eyebrow, a smirk tugging at her lips. "What's with the serious face, Michael? You look like you've seen a ghost." I felt my jaw clench, but I forced myself to stay calm. "We need to talk, Jen." She rolled her eyes, leaning back on the couch with an exaggerated sigh. "Oh God, what is it now? Did I forget to buy milk again? Or did I not text you back fast enough? Can we skip the drama for once?" I took a deep breath, holding out the DNA results. "Read this." She glanced at the paper, her brow furrowing. "What the hell is this?" "It's a DNA test," I said evenly. "For Charlie and Emma. It proves they're not mine." Her face went white, her eyes widening as she snatched the paper from my hand. She skimmed over the words, her fingers trembling slightly. But then, something changed. Instead of panic or guilt, a twisted smile spread across her face. "So you finally figured it out, huh?" she sneered, tossing the paper onto the coffee table like it was trash. "Took you long enough." My heart pounded in my chest, anger bubbling up to the surface. "You knew?" I demanded, my voice low and dangerous. "You knew all this time, and you still let me believe they were mine?" She shrugged, her expression turning cold and indifferent. "Yeah, I knew. What did you expect me to do? Tell you? Please. You're so gullible, Michael. You'd believe anything I said." "Who is he, Jen?" I asked through gritted teeth. "Mark G. Right? He's their father?" She let out a mocking laugh. "Oh, come on, Michael. You think this is all about one guy? I've had plenty of fun over the years. Mark was just the one who stuck around. He gave me something you never could. Excitement." "Excitement?" I echoed, my hands shaking with rage. "You mean lying, cheating, destroying our family? That's what you call excitement?" "Don't be so dramatic," she snapped, rolling her eyes again. "You were always so boring, so predictable. I needed more. And you know what? Everyone knew. Your parents, your sister, they all knew. They just felt sorry for you." Poor, clueless Michael, thinking he's living the perfect little life. Her words cut through me like a blade, the truth unraveling everything I'd ever known. "My family, they knew?" I whispered, disbelief and pain flooding my voice. She leaned forward, her smile turning cruel. "Of course they did. But why would they tell you? You would have just cried about it, like you're doing now." I stared at her, feeling like I was looking at a stranger. This wasn't the woman I'd married, the woman I thought I knew. This was a heartless, conniving monster who'd played me like a puppet for over a decade. "You're a monster, Jen," I breathed, shaking my head. "An absolute monster." "Yeah?" she shot back, standing up and crossing her arms. "Well, maybe you should have been more of a man, and I wouldn't have had to go looking for someone else." That was it. That was the moment I knew I couldn't just let her walk away from this unscathed. She wanted to destroy me? Fine, but I was going to take her down with me. The next few days were a whirlwind of preparation. I didn't let on that anything was different, didn't give her any hint that I was about to blow up her entire world. I stayed calm, collected, even friendly. Meanwhile, I put together a plan that would leave her with nothing but the ruin she deserved. It started with the money. I went through our joint accounts, transferring funds to a separate account that only I had access to. I canceled her credit cards, cut off her access to anything that had my name on it. Then, I gathered every piece of evidence I had. Texts, emails, photos, everything that showed her long history of cheating and deception. I filed for divorce under grounds of infidelity, using the DNA results and the investigator's report as leverage. My lawyer, a no-nonsense woman named Rachel, assured me that with everything I had, I'd walk away with full custody of the kids, because legally, Even if they weren't mine biologically, I'd been their father for years. And Jen, with her numerous affairs and financial irresponsibility, would be left with almost nothing. When I finally handed her the divorce papers, I made sure it was in front of everyone. My parents, her parents, our friends. We were at a family gathering, one of those fake, happy events she always insisted we attend to keep up appearances. "What's this?" she asked, glancing at the papers. "It's over, Jen," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I'm done being your punching bag. We're getting divorced. And by the way, everyone here knows exactly what you've been up to." The room went silent, eyes darting between us as whispers began to spread. Jen's face turned bright red, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. "You can't do this," she shrieked, throwing the papers onto the floor. "I'll ruin you, Michael. I'll take everything." "No, you won't," I replied calmly, crossing my arms. "You're not getting the house. You're not getting the kids. You're not getting anything. It's all in here. All your little secrets, all your lies." And with that, I dropped the evidence folder on the table. Her parents looked at her in shock. My parents looked away, ashamed, and Jen, well, for the first time in years, she looked scared. She stumbled back, shaking her head. "You can't do this to me, Michael," she stammered, her voice cracking. "I'll fight this. I'll make sure you regret it." "Fight all you want," I said, my voice steady. "But I've already filed for divorce. You'll be served soon enough. And if you want to play hardball, trust me, Jen, I'm more than prepared." The silence in the room was suffocating as everyone looked on, stunned by the unfolding drama. It was like a scene straight out of a soap opera, except this time, the villain was someone they all thought they knew. Jen's parents looked horrified. My parents looked ashamed, and the rest of our family and friends just stared, mouths agape. "You bastard," she hissed, her face twisted in fury. "You think you can just walk away and take everything from me?" "Actually, yes, I do," I replied, my voice calm and controlled. "Because you deserve this. You deserve every single consequence for the hell you've put me through." Without another word, I turned and walked out, leaving her standing there amidst the wreckage of her own making. It was only when I got outside and took a deep breath of the cool night air that the enormity of what I'd done hit me. I'd just blown up my entire marriage in front of everyone, exposed her lies, her betrayal, but instead of feeling guilt or regret, I felt free. The weeks that followed were a blur of legal meetings, custody arrangements, and long, sleepless nights. Jen tried everything to win people back over to her side, crying, begging, making up stories about how I'd been neglectful, how I'd driven her to cheat. But no one bought it. The evidence I had was irrefutable. She was the one at fault, and everyone knew it. My parents finally sat me down, faces drawn with guilt. "We should have told you, Michael," my mom whispered, tears in her eyes. "But we didn't know how. We didn't want to hurt you." "Hurt me?" I laughed bitterly. "You think keeping this from me didn't hurt? You knew she was having an affair, and you just let it go on for years. How could you do that?" "We thought it was just a fling, something that would blow over," my dad said quietly. "And when it didn't, we were afraid of losing you, of breaking up the family." "The family?" I repeated, shaking my head. "There is no family anymore. It's all gone. Everything's gone." They tried to apologize, tried to explain, but I couldn't listen. I didn't want to hear their excuses. They'd known. They'd known, and they'd let me build my life around a lie. It wasn't just Jen who'd betrayed me. It was them too. I cut off contact with everyone for a while. I needed space, time to think. The only people I focused on were Charlie and Emma. They didn't understand what was happening, didn't know why their mom and dad weren't living together anymore. I tried to explain it to them as gently as I could, but how do you tell two innocent kids that everything they knew about their family was a lie? "Is it because we were bad?" Emma asked one night, her big brown eyes brimming with tears. "No, sweetheart," I whispered, pulling her into a tight hug. "You and Charlie are the best kids any dad could ask for. This isn't your fault. It's just something between your mom and me." It broke my heart, hearing their confused questions, seeing their sadness. They didn't deserve this. But no matter what happened between Jin and me, I knew I'd always be there for them. I wasn't their biological father, but I was the one who'd raised them, loved them, and I wasn't about to let Jin take that away. The day we went to court for the divorce hearing, Jin tried one last desperate move. She showed up with Mark, of all people, standing beside her like some kind of united front. He was dressed in a suit, looking smug and self-assured, like he thought this was all some kind of game. It made my skin crawl. "Michael," Jin said in a low voice as we waited for the judge to call us in. "We can work something out, can't we? For the kids' sake?" "For the kids' sake?" I echoed, staring at her in disbelief. "You mean the kids you lied to me about? The kids you created with this guy while you were married to me?" Her face tightened, and Mark stepped forward, his hands clenched at his sides. "Look, man, there's no need to make this any messier than it already is. Why don't we just settle this like adults?" "Like adults?" I laughed, the sound bitter and harsh. "You think showing up here with the guy you've been screwing behind my back for 10 years is settling this like adults? Stop it." Jin snapped, her eyes flashing with anger. "This doesn't have to be ugly, Michael. We can still be civil." "Civil?" I repeated, shaking my head slowly. "You destroyed everything, Jin. There's no civil left between us." We were called into the courtroom then, and I sat through the hearing with a cold, detached calm. Rachel laid out all the evidence, every sordid detail of Jin's infidelity, her lies, her financial recklessness. Jin tried to defend herself, painting me as some overbearing, controlling husband who drove her into Mark's arms. But the judge wasn't buying it. In the end, I was granted full custody of the kids. Jin would get visitation rights, but only under supervision. The house, the savings, everything went to me. The judge even ordered her to pay child support, despite the fact that I wasn't the biological father. Mark sat there, his face growing paler with every word. By the time the judge finalized the ruling, Jin was trembling with barely suppressed rage. "This isn't over," she hissed as we left the courtroom. "I'll fight this, Michael. I'll take them from you." "I'll." "Go ahead." I cut her off coldly. "But you're not going to win. You've lost, Jin. And you know it." Part 5. Decisions and Resolutions, the Last Straw. In the months that followed, Jen spiraled. She tried appealing the custody ruling, tried using every dirty trick she could think of to turn things in her favor. But every time, she failed. I was ready for her. I'd built a wall around myself, around my kids, that she couldn't break through. Meanwhile, I focused on rebuilding. I sold the house we'd lived in together, too many painful memories embedded in those walls. I bought a new place, smaller but cozier, where the kids and I could start fresh. I got back in touch with old friends, people I'd lost contact with during the mess of my marriage. Slowly, I started to feel like myself again. And then one day, out of the blue, I got a letter from Jen. It was a rambling, barely coherent apology, filled with self-pity and blame-shifting. She said she was sorry for everything, that she missed the kids, that she wished we could go back to the way things were. But I knew better. She didn't want me back. She wanted the life I'd given her, the stability, the comfort. Without me, she was just a shell of a person, bouncing from job to job, struggling to keep her head above water. But that was her problem now, not mine. I didn't respond to the letter. There was no point. I'd made my decision. I was moving on, and there was no room for her in my future. She'd already stolen enough from me. My trust, my happiness, my sense of family. I wasn't going to let her take anything more. It's been over a year now since the divorce was finalized, since I walked out of that courtroom and left Jen behind. She's still struggling, still trying to find a foothold. Mark disappeared not long after the ruling. Turns out, he wasn't ready to play the role of father to 2 kids who weren't even his. Big surprise there. As for me, I'm doing better. It wasn't easy, and there were plenty of nights when I lay awake, haunted by everything that happened. But I've come to terms with it. I've made peace with the fact that Charlie and Emma aren't biologically mine, because they're still my kids. I'm the one who's been there for them, who's raised them, loved them. That's something no DNA test can take away. If there's one thing I've learned from all of this, it's that you can't let betrayal define you. You can't let the actions of someone else destroy who you are. Jen tried to break me, but in the end, she only made me stronger. And if you're out there, reading this, going through something similar, just know that you're not alone. It's going to hurt. It's going to feel like the end of the world. But it's not. You'll get through it, piece by piece, day by day. And one day, you'll look back and realize that you're better off without them. You're free. With the mess of the divorce finally behind me, I focused on building a new life for myself and the kids. It wasn't just about moving out of the house that held so many memories of lies and deceit. It was about creating a fresh start, one that was truly ours. I bought a cozy 3-bedroom home in a quieter neighborhood, far enough from where we used to live, but still close enough for the kids to attend their same school. It was a modest place, but it had a charm that made it feel like a real home. The kind of home where I could finally breathe again. One of the first things I did was redecorate. I wanted to erase every trace of the life I had with Jen. So, I let Charlie and Emma choose how they wanted their rooms to look. Charlie went for a superhero theme, bright posters of his favorite comic book characters covering the walls, with shelves stacked high with action figures and model cars. Emma, on the other hand, wanted a fairy tale-themed room, with soft pastel colors, twinkling lights, and a bed canopy that made her feel like a princess. Seeing them so excited and engaged in the process was a relief. It was the first time in a long time that they seemed genuinely happy. I didn't want them to feel like they lost something. I wanted them to see this as a gain, an adventure. So, when the house was finally set up, I decided to give them another surprise. For years, they'd been begging me and Jen for a dog, but Jen had always shot down the idea, saying it was too much responsibility, or that we didn't have time for a dog. Well, things were different now. One Saturday morning, I piled the kids into the car without telling them where we were going. "Dad, where are we headed?" Charlie asked, bouncing in his seat with curiosity. "It's a surprise," I said with a grin, glancing at them in the rearview mirror. Emma's eyes lit up as she started guessing. "Are we going to a theme park? Are we getting ice cream? Are we visiting Grandma and Grandpa?" "Nope, nope, and nope," I replied, shaking my head at each of her guesses. The anticipation built as I drove across town, finally pulling into the parking lot of an animal shelter. "Wait, are we getting a pet?" Charlie shouted, his eyes widening in disbelief. "Maybe," I said with a teasing smile. "That's if we can find the right one." Their excitement was infectious. We spent the next couple of hours meeting different dogs, from playful puppies to older, calmer dogs. But then, we saw him. A fluffy golden retriever puppy with the sweetest brown eyes. He had a little wag to his tail and a way of looking up at us that melted my heart instantly. The kids were smitten. "Can we take him, Dad? Please," Emma begged, kneeling down to stroke the puppy's soft fur. I pretended to think it over, but it was a done deal the second I saw how happy he made them. "What do you think we should name him?" After a lot of debate, we finally settled on Buddy. It seemed fitting, considering how quickly he became a source of comfort and joy for all of us. Buddy adjusted to his new home like he'd always been part of our family. He was there to greet us with a wagging tail every time we came home, and he slept curled up at the foot of my bed each night. When the kids were upset after a strained visit with Jen, Buddy was there to nuzzle into their laps, offering silent support. Jen's visitation rights were supervised, as ordered by the court. Her outbursts and attempts to manipulate the kids had proven she wasn't fit to have unsupervised time with them. She tried to make things difficult, crying, pleading, sometimes even shouting during her limited visitation hours, but I refused to let her disrupt our peace. She'd play the victim, blaming me for turning the kids against her, saying I was poisoning them with lies. But I never said a bad word about her in front of them. I didn't need to. They were old enough to see things for what they were. They knew she wasn't the same mom who used to read them bedtime stories or bake cookies on the weekends. That woman was long gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize, someone consumed by bitterness and anger. During one of her visits, Jen tried to guilt-trip Charlie, tears streaming down her face as she clutched his hand. "Why don't you want to stay with Mommy, baby? Don't you miss our family? Don't you love me anymore? Charlie looked at her, then glanced at me, his small face scrunched up in confusion and sadness. I do love you, Mom, but you're different now. You and Mark, you're always fighting. I don't like it. Jen's face turned red, her eyes narrowing. Mark? What are you talking about? You know your friend. The one you're always with, he said innocently, looking down at his shoes. Her jaw clenched. He's not. She stopped herself, taking a deep breath. We're not fighting, sweetie. Mommy and Mark are just talking things out. But we love you so much, and I want you to come live with us. Don't you want that? I saw the confusion in his eyes, the way he glanced at me for reassurance. I stepped forward, placing a hand on his shoulder. Charlie, you don't have to do anything you don't want to, okay? You're staying with me. No one's going to make you do otherwise. Jen glared at me, her face twisted with rage. You're such a controlling bastard, Michael. This is why I... Enough, I said firmly. If you can't control yourself, this visit's over. The supervisor stepped in then, gently guiding Jen away. She was fuming, her mouth still moving in angry silence, but she knew better than to make a scene in front of the kids. Every encounter with her left me drained, but I refused to let it show. I kept a strong front for Charlie and Emma, made sure they knew they were safe, that they didn't have to worry about anything. I threw myself into being the best father I could be, attending every school event, cheering them on at their soccer games, helping with homework. It wasn't easy, but it was worth it. Slowly, the nightmares stopped. Charlie stopped waking up in the middle of the night, crying for a mom who wasn't there. Emma stopped asking why Mommy didn't come home anymore. They began to smile more, laugh more, and life started to feel normal. One evening, as we sat around the dinner table eating spaghetti, Charlie's favorite, Emma looked up at me, her eyes shining with a question. Dad, are we happy now? She asked softly, almost as if she was afraid of the answer. I paused, looking at her, then at Charlie, and finally at Buddy, who was lounging by the table, his head resting on his paws. Yes, sweetie, we are. We really are. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I realized it was true. We were happy. Despite everything Jen had put us through, despite all the pain and betrayal, we'd come out stronger on the other side. I wasn't the same man I used to be. I wasn't the naive, trusting husband who turned a blind eye to all the red flags. I was someone new, someone who knew his own worth, someone who wouldn't settle for less. It wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about living, about moving forward. And that's exactly what I intended to do, one step at a time, with the people who mattered most by my side. One day, while I was at work, I received an unexpected email from a name I hadn't seen in a while. It was from Mark. My heart skipped a beat as I clicked on the message, 1,000 possibilities racing through my mind. What could he possibly have to say to me now, after all this time? The email was short, just a few lines. But it was enough. Michael, I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I know that doesn't change anything, and I don't expect forgiveness. I lost Jen too. We're not together anymore, and I guess I finally understand what you went through. I hope you and the kids are doing well. You deserve happiness, man. Take care. I stared at the screen, my emotions a tangled mess of confusion and surprise. Part of me wanted to delete the email, to forget I'd ever read it. But another part of me, the part that had healed, that had moved on, felt a strange sense of closure. He was gone. Out of Jen's life, out of mine. It was like the last piece of a puzzle finally falling into place. Jen had lost everything. Her family, her stability, even the man she'd thrown everything away for. And where was she now? Alone, struggling to pick up the pieces of her shattered life. I'd be lying if I said there wasn't a small, dark part of me that took satisfaction in that thought. But more than anything, I just felt free. Free from the bitterness, the anger, the need for revenge. Free to build a new life with Charlie and Emma. Free to finally let go. I closed the email and took a deep breath, looking around my office. I had AI close the email and took a deep breath, looking around my office. I had come a long way since those dark days. The pain and betrayal were still there, like faint scars that would never fully disappear, but they no longer defined me. They were just reminders of a chapter that had come to an end. It was time to focus on the future, the one I was building for myself and my kids. The months that followed were transformative. I poured myself into my work, taking on new projects and responsibilities that reignited my passion. I finally felt like I was in control again. I wasn't the broken man I'd once been. I was someone stronger, more confident, and, most importantly, I was content. One evening, as I was tucking Emma into bed, she looked up at me with those big, curious eyes of hers. "Daddy, are we going to be okay?" she asked softly. "Why do you ask that, sweetie?" I replied, brushing a strand of hair away from her face. "I don't know. Sometimes I worry that Mommy might take us away," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. I felt a pang of sadness, but I quickly leaned down and kissed her forehead. "Hey, listen to me. No one is going to take you away. You're safe here with me. I promise." She nodded slowly, the worry easing off her face. "Okay, Dad. I believe you." Hearing that made me realize how much we had all been through and how far we had come. I had fought for my kids, and I would continue to do so every day for the rest of my life. I wouldn't let anyone, especially Jen, disrupt the peace and happiness we had finally found. In the midst of this new normal, I also reconnected with people I had shut out for so long. Friends, colleagues, even a few family members. It was awkward at first, explaining what had happened, how things had unraveled so spectacularly. But the more I shared, the more I realized that people weren't judging me. They were supporting me, wanting to see me move forward. One weekend, an old college friend named Laura reached out. We hadn't spoken in years, but she'd heard about the divorce and wanted to catch up. We met for coffee, and I was surprised by how easy it was to talk to her. She listened without judgment, and for the first time in a long time, I found myself laughing, genuinely enjoying someone's company. Laura and I started hanging out more frequently, hiking, grabbing lunch, even taking Buddy for walks in the park. She never pushed, never pried, just let things happen naturally. And somewhere along the way, I realized that I looked forward to seeing her. It wasn't the same intense, head-over-heels love I'd once felt with Jen. It was something quieter, more stable, a kind of warmth that felt safe and genuine. One evening, after we'd spent the day hiking with the kids and Buddy, she turned to me with a smile. "You know, I never thought I'd say this, but I'm really proud of you, Michael." "Proud of me?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "Yeah," she nodded. "I've seen a lot of people go through tough situations like yours, and most of them end up bitter and closed off. But you didn't let it break you. You're a good father, and you've rebuilt your life in a way that's really inspiring." I didn't know what to say to that. Part of me still struggled to see myself as anything other than a man who'd been blindsided by betrayal. But hearing it from Laura, seeing the sincerity in her eyes, made me start to believe it. "Thanks, Laura," I said quietly. "That means a lot." She reached out and gave my hand a gentle squeeze. It was a simple gesture, but it sent a wave of warmth through me that I hadn't felt in years. Maybe, just maybe, I could let myself be happy again. Maybe I could open my heart to someone new, someone who truly appreciated me for who I was. I didn't rush it. We took things slow, allowing our relationship to grow naturally. The kids adored her, and she never tried to overstep or replace Jen. She was simply there, a steady, calming presence that made everything feel just a little bit easier. One day, as we sat on the back porch watching the sunset, I turned to her and asked a question that had been on my mind for a while. "Laura, do you think it's possible to truly start over? To find happiness again, even after everything?" She looked at me thoughtfully, then nodded. "Yes, I do. But it's not about forgetting the past or pretending it didn't happen. It's about learning from it, accepting it, and choosing to move forward. You've done that, Michael. You've chosen to be happy. That's what makes all the difference." I smiled, feeling a sense of peace settle over me. "I think you're right." And she was. I had chosen to be happy, to focus on the future instead of letting the past define me. I had my kids, my career, and now I had someone by my side who truly cared. It wasn't a fairy tale ending, but it was real, and it was mine. One evening, while I was cooking dinner, Charlie came up to me with a grin on his face. "Dad, are you going to marry Laura?" I almost dropped the spatula, caught off guard by his question. "What makes you ask that?" He shrugged, a mischievous glint in his eyes. "I don't know. You guys look happy together. I like her, and I think Emma does too." I glanced over at Emma, who was busy playing with Buddy, but I could see her nodding out of the corner of my eye. "Yeah, Dad. She's nice. I think you should." I felt a surge of emotion, but I kept my voice steady. "I like her too, guys. But marriage is a big decision. We're happy just the way things are right now." They seemed satisfied with that answer, but their words stayed with me long after dinner was over. It wasn't about marriage, though. It was about the fact that I had finally found something real and good, something I could build on. And I wasn't going to rush it or take it for granted. As time passed, I made peace with what happened with Jen. She still tried to reach out occasionally, emails, phone calls, even showing up unannounced at my office once or twice. But I didn't engage. I was done letting her have any power over my life. I was done letting her words or actions affect me. One day, I got a letter from her. I almost threw it away without reading it, but curiosity got the better of me. It was a long, rambling letter, filled with apologies and regrets. She talked about how Mark had left her, how she was struggling to get by, how she missed the kids and wished things had been different. "I know I can't change what happened, Michael," she wrote, "but I want you to know that I'm sorry. Truly. I don't expect forgiveness, but I hope someday you'll understand why I did what I did. I hope you'll find it in your heart to let go of the anger and pain. I know I have to live with my mistakes, but I want you to know that I wish you happiness. You deserve it." I read the letter twice, then set it down. I didn't feel anger or bitterness, just a quiet sense of closure. I didn't need her apologies or explanations. I'd already let go of the pain. I'd moved on. And that's what I'd tell anyone going through something similar. It's going to hurt. It's going to feel like you'll never recover. But you will. Day by day, piece by piece, you'll rebuild yourself. You'll find happiness again, even if it's not the kind you originally imagined. You just have to take that first step and never look back. I folded Jen's letter carefully and put it away in a drawer. It didn't belong with the other important documents or the keepsakes that I treasured. It was a symbol of a chapter that had finally come to a close. The words she wrote, filled with regret and longing, didn't stir up the anger they once might have. Instead, they served as a reminder of how far I'd come and how much I'd grown. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of true peace. I didn't need Jen's apologies or attempts to make amends. I didn't need closure from her because I'd found it within myself. And most importantly, I realized that the best revenge wasn't tearing her down or proving her wrong. It was building a life so good that her absence was inconsequential. With Jen's letter out of sight, I turned my attention back to the present, to Charlie and Emma, who were growing up faster than I could keep up with. They'd adjusted to the new normal better than I'd expected. Their laughter filled the house, the same laughter that had been missing for so long when things were unraveling. I knew I'd done something right when I saw how they thrived in this new environment, one free from drama, manipulation, and lies. Laura had become a steady presence in our lives. What started as casual get-togethers and shared hobbies gradually evolved into something more substantial. We never rushed things, but one day, it became clear that we were more than just friends. The kids adored her, and she treated them with a kindness and respect that was genuine. They even started calling her Aunt Laura, which warmed my heart in a way I hadn't felt in a long time. One weekend, after a particularly fun outing at the beach, we were sitting on the porch, watching the kids chase Buddy around the yard. Laura turned to me, her eyes thoughtful. "Michael, have you thought about what's next for you?" she asked softly. I looked at her, confused. "What do you mean?" "I mean for your future. For you and the kids," she clarified. "You've come so far, but I can't help but wonder if there's more you want. More that you need." Her words struck a chord deep within me. For so long, my focus had been on just getting through the days, on picking up the pieces of my shattered life and making sure my kids were okay. But now, things were different. We had a home, a routine, and a sense of stability I hadn't dared dream of. And for the first time, I realized I wanted more. Not just for my kids, but for myself. I've thought about it, I admitted, gazing out at the sunset. I want to give the kids the best life I can. I want them to feel safe and loved. But I also want to be happy. I want to share my life with someone who truly cares about us, someone who understands what we've been through. Laura's lips curved into a soft smile. I think you're already doing that, Michael. You've built a beautiful life for yourself and your kids. But don't be afraid to let others in. Don't be afraid to let yourself love again. I turned to her, something stirring in my chest. What about you, Laura? What do you want? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she reached out, her fingers intertwining with mine. I want to be a part of your life, if you'll have me. Not just as a friend, or as Aunt Laura. I want to be there for you and the kids, to support you and love you, if you're ready for that. The sincerity in her voice took my breath away. It was a far cry from the deceit and manipulation I'd experienced with Jen. Laura was offering me something real, something I hadn't even realized I was craving. Partnership, companionship, and love. I am ready, I said quietly, the weight of the moment settling over me. I didn't think I'd ever be ready to open myself up like this again, but you've shown me that it's possible. You've shown me that there's hope. She smiled then, a genuine, beautiful smile that lit up her face. Good. Because I've been waiting for you, Michael. I've been waiting to show you that not every love has to hurt. We didn't make any big announcements or declarations. Instead, we let things evolve naturally. Laura became a more permanent fixture in our lives, slowly integrating into our day-to-day routines. We'd cook dinners together, watch movies with the kids, and spend weekends exploring new places. It was simple, it was steady, and it was exactly what we needed. One evening, about a year after Jen's letter arrived, I made a decision. It wasn't impulsive or fueled by the need to prove something. It was a decision that came from a place of clarity and peace. I took Laura out to the very spot where we'd first reconnected, a little coffee shop on the corner of Elm Street. It was quiet, intimate, and it held a special place in both our hearts. As we sipped our coffee, I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small box. Laura's eyes widened as I opened it, revealing a simple, elegant ring. Laura, you've brought light back into my life, I said softly, my heart pounding. You've helped me heal in ways I didn't think were possible. And I know we've taken things slow, but I don't want to wait any longer. I want to spend the rest of my life with you, if you'll have me. Tears welled up in her eyes, and she nodded, a smile breaking through. Yes, Michael. Yes, 1,000 times yes. We didn't have a big, fancy wedding. It was a small ceremony, just close family and friends, with Charlie and Emma standing by our sides as we exchanged vows. There was no drama, no chaos, just love, laughter, and a sense of joy that filled every corner of the room. The kids were thrilled. Does this mean Laura's our new mom? Emma asked one day, her eyes bright with hope. Laura will always be Laura, I told her gently. She's not replacing anyone, but she loves you both very much, and she's going to be a big part of our family. They accepted it without question, and that was all I needed. We became a family in every sense of the word. We supported each other, celebrated each other's achievements, and faced challenges together as a unit. Jen's presence in our lives faded into the background. She still saw the kids occasionally, but her influence was minimal. They no longer looked to her for guidance or approval. Instead, they found that in me and Laura, in the home we'd built together. I no longer looked at the past with bitterness or anger. It was simply a part of my story, one that had shaped me, tested me, and ultimately led me to where I was meant to be. I wasn't the man I once was, but I was okay with that. I was better, stronger, happier. One day, as I watched Laura and the kids playing in the yard, Buddy barking excitedly as he chased a ball, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. I'd been through hell and back, but I'd emerged from the other side. And for the first time, I knew that everything I'd gone through had led me to this moment. I'd learned that true happiness isn't about finding perfection. It's about finding peace, even in the imperfections. It's about loving deeply, even when love has hurt you before. It's about letting go of the past and embracing the future with open arms. So here's my advice to anyone reading this, to anyone who's been through betrayal or heartbreak. Don't let the pain define you. Don't let the actions of others destroy your faith in love or in yourself. Keep going, keep believing, and one day, you'll find that light at the end of the tunnel. You'll find that you're stronger than you ever imagined. You'll find that there's more to life than the hurt. You'll find that happiness, true, lasting happiness, isn't just possible. It's waiting for you, just like it was waiting for me.